Okay, sweet. And we are live. So let's get started. Okay, everyone. Hi, my name is Cree. I am part of the ETHGlobal team. Really excited to have Peter from XMTP join us. He's going to be giving his talk, Native Web3 Messaging with XMTP. Before I let him kick it off, though, I will just let you guys know that we'll probably save questions for the very end. So maybe like the last 10 minutes. So if you want to do Q&A, you can just do the like raise your hand reaction thingy. And Peter can choose you and you can come off mute and ask the question. Or if you are like me and you're quite shy, you can just drop your question in the chat and we will have them all answered. And yeah, without further ado, Peter, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're really excited to be here. Like, I love this event. And, you know, I want to just kind of give an overview of what XMTP is, get into a little bit of the technical details, but mostly just kind of give you a primer of what we're trying to do in Web3. And then at the end, have a couple ideas of like hackathon ideas that we have that we've been working on and just encouraging people to reach out. Hoping that over this month we can be really collaborative. We just got done with obviously ETH NYC, and that was an awesome event. So just really excited to keep meeting people and building cool things. So to begin with, I just want to give an overview, you know, what is XMTP, kind of the core concepts of our protocol. And then I'm going to go through the SDK a little bit, give some examples and get into ideas, and then point you to resources that we have available to really make, you know, building with XMTP pretty easy. So what is XMTP? At a big picture, right? Like if you think about the name, it's very similar to SMTP, and that's very intentional. You know, we're all spent a lot of our careers in messaging and email, and the idea here was, can we build an open protocol and standards to let wallets message each other, right? So our goal is to really establish this protocol in which client develop, you know, people building apps can plug into our network and protocol and enable messaging out of the box. And not just, you know, centralized messaging, but true native Web3 messaging, in that, you know, on the encryption and the storage is done on nodes, and that over time it'll be fully decentralized. So it's really about building this open, composable, decentralized communication network for Web3, in which, you know, all of the code will be open source and it'll really be community owned. Technically, how it works is we built it on top of Waku, which is kind of a wrapper on libp2p. And we spent a lot of time really making that production capable. So, you know, where messages don't disappear and it can really scale to, you know, unbounded extends. The idea is that messages would live forever. So that's a big engineering task. And we're really just focused on the protocol part. Like, we don't want to go out and build, you know, the Gmail for Web3 or something like that. We really want to be the pipes. So we spend a lot of our time and energy just focused on, you know, encryption, storage, so that messages can really be reliably delivered. And that users can really message from anywhere across Web3. So we think about it as, you know, we're not only enabling like a protocol for developers to use to send mail, but we're also building a network, right? So if you think about it, with a wallet, you know, a user of your application who wants to send a message and they put in another wallet ID, that other wallet ID needs to know that that message was sent. So what we're doing is, you know, we're working with a lot of wallets, we're working with a lot of application developers, you know, dapps, to really build out this network so that you can reliably reach people and that your users can have like a really good messaging experience. And so with that, you know, why, you know, hackathons like HackFS are like so core to this is, then we're just trying to build use cases with developers. So really cool things like token gated chat. Somebody built like NFT bartering over messaging on top of XMTP and OpenSea. So that's where we're at right now, is just trying to work with developers to build, you know, really valuable use cases that will then create value for end users and help build the network. So that's really our core mission. You know, we've been working on this for about a year. A lot of that, again, has been sort of like core protocol engineering work, and now we're starting to get up and extend upon the SDK. So the core concepts are really at the protocol level. Users just send and receive encrypted messages through authenticated clients by way of a wallet signature, right? And messages are persisted in nodes upon the XMTP network, enabling portability of people's communications. So it really is this thing where users own their messages. So if you think about the decentralized nodes, they all gossip about the messages. A user at any point in time could go on and pull down all of their messages from any one of those nodes or clients, right? Even somebody could quickly spin up their own client and pull down, authenticate and sign, and then pull down all of their messages. So this really is getting into the territory of where users own their communications. We're not building another walled garden. And then node operators, anybody can come along and host a node when we're decentralized and be part of that network. And again, like I mentioned before, clients and peers are implemented as Waku2 peers. But we built more specialization on top of that, functions and capabilities to make it just better at doing this. At the client level, clients really encode and decode message formats using a standard interface. So if you think about it, what we do is when somebody signs, we encrypt and then send that message. And then the client, when the user signs, it decrypts that message, right? So encrypting and decrypting encoded message content, that's what clients do. And when we think about clients, that's clients on the network. And obviously submitting and retrieving encrypted messages to and from the network. And then generating secure wallet-based identities capable of encrypting and decrypting messages. So I would say that right now, a lot of people would think like, oh, is messaging on chain or off? We're not on chain. What we're doing is building, a parallel network, something closer to probably like a Filecoin. So when you sign with the XMTP network, we generate this key pair relationship. And then a client can access that and then pull down and decrypt messages, right? And then what we're working on is persisting wallet-based identities locally or within the network so that the user experience is good, where they're not signing all the time, but where we could persist it in the browser someplace where users could have a really good experience. So that's at like the client level. And then nodes are really, relaying, they're all about relaying and health of the network. So when encrypted messages get stored to the network, nodes just really relay them and then retrieve them and then deliver them to clients. So in the future, when we have a lot of node operators on the decentralized network, they're really creating health of the network. And then that's where it becomes, really community owned. Where nobody can really prevent messages from being sent or received. And the more node operators there are, the better the network health is. So let's just, at a very simple level, look at kind of the current state of the architecture. So if you think about, a wallet might have, composer functionality that uses the XMTP SDK. And an inbox. So users, like the wallets that we're working with, users will have an inbox and they'll be able to compose and receive messages facilitated through the SDK, and that will talk to the XMTP network. So in the beginning, XMTP will host all of our nodes, right? So we are sort of in production now. Production doesn't mean something like mainnet. It's still on a test net, but production means that we're not wiping the network, messages will persist. It doesn't mean that there won't potentially be a breaking change or something as we go, but we're able for clients to ship messaging-based applications to production, and we have production level support, right? So we're ensuring uptime, we're on call, we're doing all the things necessary to make sure that clients have a good experience. We are hosting our nodes in the beginning because we want to ensure that, one, we can prevent denial of service attacks. So we want to ensure there's a health of network. And we want to be able to control like attack vectors in ways that might be unknown to us at now. So what we're doing is we're hosting our nodes to prevent something bad from happening, but we're on a progressive decentralization roadmap where these nodes will then go to probably app partners who are building apps, and then to anybody who wants to host a node. But how it works at the top level is all the same. So whether you're a wallet or you're an app, a dapp, you all can just plug into the network and use the SDK out of the box to really, bring messaging into your apps in a few hours. In the future state, this is really what we're working on. So right now you can think about it's very sort of simple messaging, right? Text can be sent back and forth between wallets, and the network facilitates it. But there's a huge opportunity for the ecosystem to keep expanding. And that's why I think, like an event like this is so core, because there's so much opportunity to create value in the messaging stack, right? So if you think about things like spam or safety. So we will be the dumb pipes, and just like SMTP will, deliver email that gets sent over it. We're the same way. We're not going to be in the business of trying to provide, like block spam at the protocol level. What can happen is at the client level, the client can do this. And there's all these new and unique ways to do that in Web3, right? So if you think about like token gated chat, where a user can say, hey, I only want to, say I want to use Lens, or I want to use the lit protocol. I want to create rules on who can, send messages to me, or who I receive messages from, or different channels that I'm part of. So you have these cool opportunities to build these tools that don't necessarily need to be an end client, meaning like a messaging application, but there will be a lot of services in the stack that create a lot of value, whether that's spam and safety, right? Like controlling attack vectors. Or that's using a thing like a social graph, so like Lens or Cyber Connect, or obvious identity. So I think it's important to start thinking about the different layers on the messaging stack across different things like wallets, dapps, marketplaces, as they all have unique needs. And so we really see this ecosystem of development partners where we're sort of the network, and then people are creating a lot of value, on top of that for all of the application developers. So just like, traditional messaging stacks get incredibly complex, the same thing will happen here. So we look at that as a great opportunity for people to not only build cool projects, but actually these will turn into companies. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the end. So, messages are off chain, and essentially all blockchain wallets are supported, right? On Ethereum. So, we're using EVM chain, and then, it'll literally just like work on Polygon. So anywhere that EVM is supported, we're interoperable across those chains, including testnets. So it's pretty cool. Like it'll just work out of the box in those environments. So getting into the SDK, so we have a JavaScript SDK, so React.js, that's open source now. And what this really handles is authentication, as I mentioned, the connection management, generating the key pair for the relationship, key storage and the signing, relationship initiation, so between a sender and a receiver, establishing that relationship. And then obviously creating a conversation, sending a message, retrieving the history of all your messages, like all of your conversations, streaming messages. So when a new message comes in, sending it out to the clients, content validation. So I'll talk a little bit about content types, but essentially we send across a payload. So the SDK can validate that content, and if it's not correct, can gracefully degrade. And then format validation, similar to that. Sorry, I'll peek at the chat. So message attachments, this is really good. And I'll talk about this in a little bit. What we're working on is sort of a community-driven process we call XIP. So if you think about EIPs, these are XIPs. And one of those is called XIP5, which is message format. So if you think about MIME and SMTP, it's the same thing that we're building in XMTP. Right now, it's just string, right? It's just strings of text. Next thing that we're working on are things like images, and then obviously video. There's other really cool things like buttons. So, links obviously lead to a lot of fraud and spam. And so what we're building with developers is the definition of those standards around the payloads so that we can support unique attachment types, right? So I would say that we're not there yet, but that's where we're going. And that's being driven with development partners currently. So as you think about these experiences you want to build, that's something that you can come in, write in with an XAP, define it, put it out to the community, and then people sort of refactor on it. And then it becomes part of the standard. And then over time, the protocol really, it becomes part of the protocol. So it's like a standard set in stone. Let me just keep going just so I can get through a couple more slides, and then I'll get back to the chat. So the SDK is, I would say, very simple. Like the thing that I think we've done well here is you can really spin up a messaging client in a couple hours. And we also have a fully functional example React chat app that's open source as well. So that has all of sort of the UI tied to the SDK. But the SDK is intentionally simple. Right now it's in React.js only. We're currently working on React Native, and then we'll get more into mobile like Swift and go down that path, and then server to server. Supported wallets, I kind of talked about this, but the SDK doesn't include a wallet abstraction. It's assumed, we're assuming that you already have a way of obtaining a wallet connection, like a wallet connect or something like that. So we don't handle that. And identities must be generated, generated from and associated with an Ethereum wallet's public address and private key. So those are like things that we expect clients to be able to, and those are like core requirements on generating identities. I just talked about content types. I think this is one of the coolest things that will come as part of the development of the protocol, XMTP. And that's really just these content types, right? So as I mentioned, it could be images and videos, but what we're starting to see from developers are just really cool things. Like somebody at ETHNYC built this bartering system on top of OpenSea and Seaport and XMTP, where you could essentially chat back and forth with somebody who had an NFT. You don't even need to know their public identity, just their wallet address. And then as part of that payload, he included links generated from Seaport that would basically say like, accept offer or reject offer. And if you accepted the offer, it would actually execute the transaction, right? Right now, that's driven through like link-based URLs, but that could be a button content type, right? Where you could literally see accept offer or reject offer happening completely over messaging protocol. And that's enabled because when clients adopt the standard, then clients can trust that structure and render those buttons. And if you see a link, then we can get rid of links that are leading to so many spoofing and fraud issues. So, obviously with Web3 and, on-chain data, there's all these completely new and unique ways of thinking about those experiences in messaging. So I just wanted to call this out specifically because I think it's a really fun way to engage and think about different experiences you can build. And then again, as we're early in the protocol development, it's really an opportunity to come in and help define this. So what we've seen is, developers go out and build something, come back and they're just sharing it with the community. And then our job is to kind of triangulate this stuff and help it become a standard. Security. So, what we're really focused on is, establishing secure, unfalsifiable relationships between identities, right? So that's what we're trying to focus on is helping people enable these trusted communications in which they can verify, sender and receiver and trust the identities. And the other thing is, only those parties can then, encrypt and decrypt messages. Like we have no visibility into the contents of messages. It will literally only be the sender and receiver through the encryption and decryption process. And the other thing that's cool is, we purposely designed the protocol with the ability to replace algorithms. So the algorithm set on encryption and security will be extensible in that we understand that things will change. And so we've sort of added this layer of abstraction in a backward compatible manner, but that way we can replace things in the future. So it's sort of a future safe model. And again, I think this opens itself up to obviously, being open source and people improving upon the protocol itself. and contributing. So just something that I want to keep reinforcing as a theme is, we're not going to be this black box protocol. We're really, obviously going to be community owned and open source, but it's a fun time to come in and help sort of design some of these standards at the security algorithm level, at the content type level, and then obviously at the node level on the network. So what we are trying to show with XMTP is, we want to be part of this composable web, right? We are very focused on, being one of many protocols that live in the messaging stack. One of many protocols that live in client, messaging applications, and building a community in which, we're collaborating, with other protocols and developers, because we believe that, Web3 people are just going to build, user experience that have never been seen before. What we don't want to build is a walled garden. So, things that have been, had a lot of success at hackathons. In fact, at ETHNYC, two out of the 10 were finalists using XMTP. Is just, using these different protocols to assemble, these client experiences. So if you think about like XMTP and Lit, being able to add inbox filters using Lens. We've done things where it's XMTP and CyberConnect, where people can just leverage a social graph out of the box. So people can already see their known connections on who they can send messages to and receive messages from. So, please, by all means, build whatever you want. We're offering 3 prizes and then a prize pool. And, we're going to always be rewarding people who are being creative. So think as crazy as you want to think. We're just trying to encourage this view of Web3 in which all these protocols work together. And the more that we can collaborate, the better. So resources, github.com/XMTP, as I mentioned, it has the JavaScript SDK. It does have this fully functional React chat app, and that has everything. So obviously the authentication, conversation views, all of your conversations, message composition, retrieving messages, all of the things the SDK just works out of the box in the React app, and a pretty good quick start guide to get you going. We have our docs at docs.xmtp.org. And then, we're very active on Discord, and we'll be very active in the HackFS Discord channel as well. The other thing, if you look at our listing on the HackFS site, we've listed a ton of previous hackathon examples and pointed to the repos and demo apps. So there's like different ways to render the conversation views, different ways of showing this composability of Web3. So if you need something or need an example, just hit me up in Discord and I'll send it to you. If not, check out our page on the HackFS site, and I think it has a ton of resources. So I know I only have a couple minutes, I'll stop. Our roadmap is very much focused on, this progressive decentralization. And, obviously in future enhancements to the protocol, I would say the number one thing that we're focused on is reliability of security, message transport and storage, and then just working to support, all of the applications on top of the protocol. So hopefully this wasn't too boring. I know it was pretty dry, but I think it's just really important in how you think about XMTP as you start to build applications, and hopefully it's helpful in this hackathon.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Thank you, Peter. I was just gonna say, yeah, it seems like you have a lot of questions in the chat. So that's really cool. So we are good to go over like 5 minutes past the original time, just so you can get those answered if you'd like.
Yeah, so one thing I'll say, I'm going to take all these questions. I'm not an engineer. So I'm sort of like a technical product manager. But some of these questions I may not be able to answer, or I don't want to answer them incorrectly. So I'll be sure to respond to everybody. But something like how we handle key storage, I don't know, like at a deep level. Or I'll follow up and get that question answered to you. I would say with Zach, so could file pick video attachments be occluded through a Filecoin bridge? Totally, right? I think that if you think about the payload, you can build any client experience you want, and people are already doing this where they're using Filecoin, they're using IPFS to do different things. In fact, in that NFT message bartering system, he was using IPFS to store all the contents up there. So we're really encouraging people, and it'll work. Like, it's easy to work with XMTP and other services. I think the key is then how do other clients understand this? Meaning you can build an application and use Filecoin, no question. What we're trying to do is then, is there a standard to be developed and how you do that? So the payload itself can become standardized where other clients on the network understand that payload and can render that. So that's really the work that we're trying to do. And so I think that, the answer is yes. And then how it becomes permanent is the question over the next 6 months. Emojis, totally supported. We don't have an emoji picker in the example chat app, but you can, I built examples on my own just with NPM plugins that work, and the emojis will get sent across and rendered in the clients. Yeah, so how does Waku fit in XMT? Waku is just, libp2p, like it's a peer messaging protocol that is open sourced, currently available. So what we did is we started with something that kind of had the base structure of what we wanted, and we built on top of it. And it just helped us move faster, right? And it doesn't mean that we had to make less compromises to go faster. Long term, we'll probably build our own Waku, we'll replace it. But it really is just think about like a pretty stable foundation to build upon. I'd say we've done a lot of work, and you can see like we've done a lot of pull requests that have been accepted into Waku to be a little bit more stable and reliable. But it's a peer-to-peer messaging protocol that was available that we built upon. Yeah, so our goal is fully, I'm reading Dyson's, are there plans to decentralize the XMTP network? Our plans are to be fully decentralized, no questions. And it's really because we want to establish an open protocol in which messages are immutable, right? In that anybody can host a node and can reliably, send and receive messages. So we look at that as an essential requirement to how messaging would work in Web3 for everyone's benefit. So it's going to take us some time, and that's okay because we want to do it right. Our engineering team has like deep expertise in security and building these systems. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it's something that is going to happen with, not only as a tenant of our own roadmap, but with our development partners. It's sort of like a key requirement for them as well. So Kit's question is, do you have to pay for each message transaction? Like when a message is sent, does someone have to sign off on the cost at any point? So right now, no, everything is free. It's important to note that it won't be free forever. And that, I think that's really important. And how we're looking at it is, there'll be a micro transaction between entities that do not have an established connection, meaning you may have an established connection through like Lens or through a social graph, or you may have established a connection on a marketplace with other people. So you would be able to send and receive messages for free. But say that an entity wanted to reach a bunch of people they did not have established connections with, they would pay a microtransaction for that, and presumably node operators would share in that revenue. Now, I will say that there's a lot of questions in TBD on this. It's not going to happen for quite some time, but it will be something in which the market would set the price, meaning we won't be the entity to set the price and collect the revenue. It would be something where, the market economics would drive the price, and that everyone participating at the node level would share in it. But again, that will be quite some time down the road. So Zahn asks, could XMTP be used to easily identify users, accumulating ID of information at different platforms and protocols? Yeah, so for example, WorldCoin, ETH names, unstoppable domains, and similar. Yeah, absolutely, right? I think that what we will build is a network, and that network will have identities. And those identities will become, more and more known over time. Again, I think we'll be trying to make ourselves as functional with entities. I mean, ENS is already supported. We've somebody built something with WorldCoin at ETH NYC, so is WorldCoin identity with XMTP. And as you think about, the network itself, it will understand those identities over time. And I think that's really important, as those identities then have a social graph attached, and we're able to understand, who those people would want to message or receive messages from. You can quickly see that it becomes like really core to what we build. So great question. Just scrolling up through the questions here. Frayne, I think I covered your which wallets are supported. It's just really any EVM wallets will work. Yeah, so Sirkar asked, how does this differ from the BlockScan chat and other chat platforms? So I think this is really important. We're building a fully decentralized messaging protocol, which is completely different from a centralized messaging platform. So, BlockScan, you can sign, you can sign with a wallet, but then the backend is completely centralized. So now I don't know what they're doing on the backend, but presumably they could, read contents. They could be doing things that a centralized messaging service would do. It probably makes a big difference. When we're fully decentralized, it really becomes a community owned and run network in which we don't then become the governing body over all of the decisions. In fact, if you looked at our term sheet, like we will be a minority holder of node operators in the incentives model of the network. So over time, centralization and decentralization will really matter. In that not one entity can control the network. So we look at that as a really important distinction in our mission, in that we're trying to enable something like SMTP where not one single entity owns it. And that's really important with messages, because that means that messages can always live in a decentralized network versus if a single entity owns it, they can control what can go through, what can actually reach users, and control the cost and different things. So we want to avoid that. But how are you? So I'm looking at Zahn, but how are you going to teach community to drive itself properly? I don't know. I mean, those are just questions that we'll have to encounter. I think if you look at something like SMTP, that's sort of an established paradigm in which there's an open source protocol and people can spin up and host SMTP nodes and handle the sending and receiving of messages. So I don't think it's about people behaving properly or improperly. I think it's about building a global network in which developers can use to send and receive messages reliably. And then typically the market will govern itself. What we don't want to be is in the censorship business or regulating who can send or receive messages. It's really about establishing a protocol in which wallets can message each other. So we're not trying to be, in sort of the political mindset. What we're trying to do is build technology that allows communication between wallets, and those wallets can expose their identities, or those wallets could just be wallets, right? So our mission is really building this protocol and not governing then the people who use the protocol.
Awesome. Okay, well, we are at time. Thank you so much, Peter. That was, super, super helpful. Thank you everyone for the questions. If you have any more Or if, like Peter said, you need a more technical answer, hit up their Discord channel. Go ask your questions there anytime you want, and they'll be monitoring it. And yeah, thanks again, Peter.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you
and
so
yeah,
much.
this will be recorded and posted for you guys too if you need to refer back to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.